it's Monday, August 15, 2022. Good morning, I'm Andy Johnson. I could tell you at the beginning, I'm coming to you from Scarborough, Tobago, which is the site of this year's annual conference of the Caribbean Broadcasting Union. We'll be updating you on that over the next couple of days as well. But let's tell you what's happening on the program this Monday morning. We talk to Mr. Greendot Indal Singh. He's a member of parliament for Couva North. He's been a trade union leader before that, and we asked him to give us a sense this morning on the impact he thinks that has come from this massive day of demonstrations in Port of Spain last Friday. Once again, as trade unions and their leaders continue to push back on the government, the position is that the CPO is offering now 4%. It started with 2%. There were some reports in the
Welcome to the American University of Barbados School of Medicine. We offer 2 comprehensive MD programs, 5.5-year program for high school finishers, and 4-year program for college graduates.
The American University of Barbados has been accredited with the Barbados Accreditation Council, BAC, and has been accredited
by CAMHP.
As the medical school has affiliate hospitals at Baltimore and Chicago in the USA and the Caribbean islands.
Don't miss us in TNT in Tobago, Mount Irving Bay Resort, August 12th and 13th. In Trinidad, Trade Winds Hotel San Fernando, August 14th and 15th. And K-Poc Hotel, Maraval, August 16th and 17th.
Knowing how to tell authentic is as easy as 1, 2, 3. Find it, match it, search it. Step 1. Find the style number on the tag. Step 2. Match the style number inside the jersey with the number on the tag. Step 3. Search it. A quick Google search of the style number will verify the jersey is authentic when the search results match the jersey being searched. Don't be fooled by counterfeit jerseys. Before you buy, remember to find it, match it, search it.
Fan Zone, 2 locations nationwide. Center City Mall, Chaguanas and Movietown, Port of Spain. Nationwide delivery available.
The best for your baby is at dbesttoys.com. We have the best strollers, car seats, walkers, feeding accessories, playpens, cribs, clothing, and the widest range of brand name toys like Barbie, Hot Wheels, Nerf, LOL, Fisher-Price, Cocomelon, Intex pools, Amazon Fire tablets, HP and Gateway laptops, and the best bikes, scooters, skateboards, and ride-on. Visit us in-store at 7 Main Road, MacBean, or shop online now at dbesttoys.com. That's dbesttoys.com. We have the best toys at the best prices.
Let your voice be heard. Call Madam Fix-It on WESN, the only place that effectively helps you with your woes. Having problems getting onto government agencies, water woes, NIS and pension problems, potholes, and much, much more. Call me, Madam Fix-It, every Monday, Wednesday, and Friday, right here on WESN. Let me fix it for you.
Every word, every line, every paragraph depicts a real moment in someone's life. A father, a sister, a mother, a brother. We at Newsday are dedicated to you, the people, and through independent, unwavering journalism, strive to always bring your stories to life. Because your stories are more than just words. Newsday, independent and credible.
Is it politics? What is it? Is it that nobody cares about sports?
The kind of support that sport used to get in the past is no longer here.
The thing is, taking a knee doesn't mean that that's the only thing you're doing now, Andy.
Right.
Taking a knee along with other stuff.
Samantha, what are you looking forward to when you return home to Trinidad and Tobago after winning the title?
Thank you very much for speaking it into existence.
Is it no pressure on Nicholas Paul?
It makes me more motivated to work hard and to go out there and rep the white and black.
Why are we sending a team to the Winter Olympics?
There are a number of Trinbagonians who are in the diaspora and have grown up in winter sport. It's an opportunity that the Trinidad and Tobago Olympic Committee will not close the door on.
I also believe in the players that we have. Once you can motivate the players, you can get the best out of them.
All right, welcome back to the program. Well, with us now, Mr. Rishi Maharaj. He's a public information advocate, a freedom of information advocate, to be more specific. We're talking with him about the fact that one of the parties in the matter involving the case against the state in favor of Joala Rambaran, who was a former governor of the central bank and who was removed from that position. He's filed action claiming distress and claiming wrongful dismissal. And the authorities are asking that the court not release the information or the details of whatever conclusion that has arrived at the matter. We want to look at what's the rights and wrongs about that. What are the conditions under which such a petition can be allowed, and why is the state seeking to keep that away from public view? Rishi, good morning. Thanks for coming on.
Hi, good morning, Andy. Thank you very much for having me.
All right. Well, let's get to outline for us what might be the substantive issues involved here, and to what extent this petition you think may succeed or not.
Yeah, I think when you're looking at this case, it's interesting to note that the central bank has been exempt from the Freedom of Information Act since 1999, and that stemmed from the whole issue of Satmaraj, and when he tried to get information from Mr. Kujo when he was appointed as a director, and questions to his CV and his qualifications. And at that time, the government sought to exempt the central bank from the Freedom of Information Act. And then we have to also note that the Central Bank Act also has secrecy provisions in it that, can prevent it from giving out certain types of information. But those types of information would normally deal with central bank in terms of its economic affairs and separating apart from its administrative, functions, HR and all the stuff like that. Now, the case of Mr. Rambaran is interesting because when he was terminated as governor of the central bank, he sought an interview with the World Bank to get a position with them, and he was successful in it. And as part of that interview process, the World Bank would have sought information from the Minister of Finance, given that he was a former central bank governor, to get some, part of their due diligence. And as part of that correspondence between the Minister of Finance and the World Bank subsequently withdrew its offer from Mr. Rambaran. And he then sought from the Minister of Finance information as to what did he give to the World Bank in order for them to withdraw his offer. The Minister of Finance more or less refused to give him the information, and he used the Freedom of Information Act to be able to get that information from the Ministry of Finance and was successful. And now with that information in hand, he now used this to pursue a civil action against the Minister of Finance and the government for wrongful dismissal. And this is where we are now, where I think he will have been successful in the case, and the central bank is now taking the steps to be able to keep out of the public domain the sums of money that they would have given to him or pay him for wrongful dismissal. I think at the end of the day, from a transparency, accountability point of view, given that he was successful in this case for being wrongfully dismissed, I kind of find it strange now why the central bank would want to keep that information out of the public domain.
Yeah, you think it's just a matter of what the central bank or the Minister of Finance sort of seeking some kind of revenge here? What is the public being protected from? Or what is the bank being protected from by this request, you think, if there's any ground at all on which it could stand?
I think it's a matter of embarrassment, if I had to put it bluntly. At the end of the day, he was successful, and now they're just, I guess, hammering out the details as to the compensation to be awarded for wrongful dismissal. I think at the end of the day, the government is just, in terms of trying to protect face, not wanting to disclose the amount of information they would have paid to him. I truly can't understand, why they would want to now not have that information, put out in the public domain, I guess. And as we saw from the case, a petition was made independent of seeking permission of Mr. Ambrand's counsel. So it was something that was even done behind the back of the counsel of Mr. Ambrand to try to protect this information. And I really, truly cannot see how information like that, should be protected or sealed, because again, it has nothing to do with the operations of the central bank and its economic aspect, but just purely administration. And I really can't see why that should be stricken, because again, decisions of the court are open decisions. Unless the court feels there's a strong reason not to have that information put out there, they would normally seal it or protect it from disclosure. But again, those are very extreme circumstances that the court will do that, and I really can't see why in this case, that should be protected.
Yeah, because when you look at it at the end of the day, really what we're talking about here is the decision as to how much will be the damages he collects, and what is that going to be a figure that would be so embarrassing. One has to try and search, to go on a fishing expedition to find out what really lies behind this. You think it has anything to do with what he will collect or the amount of it?
It is different things. I think it may deal with, how much you will have to collect, or possibly it may also disclose, the amount of monies that directors of central banks are given. Again, you have to realize that the central bank is a unique creature in that it should be independent in its function to regulate economic policy within the country. But obviously there needs to be a relationship between the central bank and the Minister of Finance. And the central bank, at least over the last 10 years, has really hid behind this cover of secrecy to prevent people from being able to ask questions as to how it's going about his job. I can go to the fact of, CL Financial, and the whole way that matter was dealt with the central bank and affirmation and the stuff he did with that, where the central bank over the last, I guess, 10, 15 years has hid behind this veil of secrecy that within the Central Bank Act, not to want to be accountable to the public for its actions. So again, I find it unique and strange why something like this would be done.
Yeah, and the issue has to do also with well, at least you mentioned it a while ago that so they sent this petition to the court and not to Mr. Ambrand or his attorneys.
Yeah, exactly. That's because normally if you want something like this, it should normally be by the congruence of both parties. So both parties will meet and will agree that because of the circumstances, it's in the best position to seal this or keep it protected so that nobody is able to see the information. And again, those are normally extreme circumstances because decisions of the court are public documents and are open documents. When judgments are made, you can go onto the website or the library of the judiciary and you're able to see those judgments and exactly what transpired and what was awarded and stuff like that. So again, in order to do this, there's normally a practice, and the practice would be that both parties would come together and agree that this is something that should be protected, you know, so that they would approach the court to be able to do that. But in this case, it was done absent of consulting Mr. Ambrand's counsel. So again, that is also a unique case that the counsel is also arguing that, you know, it should not happen because they were not part of the process.
Yeah. So that is a kind of breach of procedure, if that is a term that could be applicable here, that this is because the matter is in the court, it's a public matter, and so you have a petition, you put something on the table to one side and you don't inform the other side. Again, it's kind of weird if that's a term that could be used here. And why would that be a strategy?
Strange.
Yeah.
It's strange that something like this should be done.
Yeah, I don't know to what extent this is within an area that you might want to comment on, but from the get-go on the issue, I thought that something was wrong with it in the way in which he was removed. Whatever you want to say about his competence or what have you, and whatever issues the incoming administration at the time, because that's what they were at the time, had with him and his appointment. The fact that the man has to go to the president, and the president has to take a position on it. And what happened here is that, in my view, they waited until the substantive president was away and out of the country, and the acting president was the president of the Senate at the time. And so for a few days that she's there, they got hot to do that. And to me, it was a kind of ugly politics to begin with. If you wanted, if there was such a strong case, let the substantive president deal with it. And I felt something was wrong with that from the beginning. I'm not sure what your view might be on it.
Yeah, the whole approach in dealing with the case, I mean, from, like you said, from the beginning, was obviously there was a level of uncomfortability between the incoming administration and the governing central bank. And then I guess also what, put the final nail in the coffin would have been that statement I think he would have given when he talked about the Forex issue, and then he identified the main Forex people who consume the most Forex in the country, and maybe that didn't go well, or maybe the Minister of Finance was looking for, you know, the final excuse that he can use to begin proceedings to dismiss him. But again, the whole situation was really handled in a very poor manner. And then when you come to that now, what also impacted it was, you know, Mr. Ambrand, after dismissed, he approached the World Bank for a position that was vacant. From the Freedom of Information case, he was successful in getting the job with the World Bank and was in negotiations with the World Bank for discussing the salaries in terms of conditions and everything. And as part of the World Bank's due diligence, given he was a former central bank governor, they wrote to the Minister of Finance, I guess, for, if not a recommendation, their views on his character. And then based on the correspondence that came from the Minister of Finance to the World Bank, his offer of acceptance was withdrew. And again, Mr. Ambrand, I guess, using the law to his advantage, filed the Freedom of Information request to get the information from the ministry. And the ministry obviously said, no, I'm not going to give you that because of certain exemptions. And then when it went to court, the court was even very strongly condemning of the government and of the Minister of Finance on the approach that they took to keep that information from him. So again, this has a history that goes back many, many years, and it shows, I guess, the level of, you know, underhandedness, if you want to use that word, that was taken to dismiss him as governor, because as governor of central bank, that's a very high role, you know, deal with economic policy of the country. So again, the whole issue was handled very, very poorly, and now we're seeing the consequences of it.
I'm not sure one will not be excused for feeling that there was a lot of the high level of vindictiveness in it.
I would say so, because I mean, it's interesting you mention that, because in the FY case with Mr. Ambrand and the Minister of Finance, the court was very unforgiving of the approach of the Minister of Finance, because in his response, the Minister of Finance says, because he has been a government minister for so much years, and he has, that's Prime Minister for a number of periods, and he has a high level of understanding of international relations, and the court should rely on that and rely on his expertise to examine the information. And the court was very much, I would say, unkind to the Minister of Finance in their rulings to say that, because of that should not be the only justification for the court to say, yes, the government and the Minister of Finance was correct. So again, there's a level of animosity between the Minister of Finance and the former central bank governor. There's no plays out in the public domain now.
And it continues with this latest
continues.
Did you have any insight into what the Minister of Finance said then as to what caused the central bank to pull back the offer? What do you know anything about the details of what they said?
No, I don't know the details of what was said, but I'm sure Mr. Rembrandt would have gotten the advice or the correspondence, and he may be in a better position to indicate exactly what the Minister of Finance will say, but I'm sure that would have played a major role in his civil case against the Ministry of Finance.
I'm just wondering what do you make of the time in which this matter has come to a conclusion such that this is where we're at now, that there's this attempt to block the information from coming out. In your view, you think that it was less than, it was a period of time shorter than what we have come to expect decisions like these in the courts?
Yeah, I think it was a very, it was a very short decision made by the court in terms of ruling in favor of Mr. Rembrandt. And then the timing was just, it's just interesting, the timing of everything that's playing out right now.
Yeah. And I'm going to go back to the early days of the administration, within days of Mr. Imber becoming Minister of Finance, and he was reporting sort of on the situation that the administration inherited at the time. And he said that Mr. Rembrandt had come to him as governor of the central bank, saying that, but we had foreign exchange only for a couple of days, 2 or 3 days or something like that. And again, you got the sense that he was suggesting, at least how it came across to me, he made the fact that Mr. Rembrandt had come to him with that, you get a sense that he was suggesting that Mr. Rembrandt was sort of less than contrite about it and probably chortling about the fact, saying, well, you all deal with that. You have 3 days of foreign exchange left. I could be wrong, but the sense I got was that he was saying, well, he came in a kind of triumphant kind of way about it, and that stuck with me from then.
Yeah, I think it was, at the end of the day, it's always interesting when you have administrations change in office, and then the individuals, they would leave in positions that would survive, their period of office, and then the relationship between those officers and the new incumbent administration, especially at the time of this, obviously the economic situation the country was facing in terms of the levels of monies in the public purse and stuff like that. So it always leads to a very interesting reaction between incumbent administrations of people from prior administrations who are left there, and I guess there may have been, I don't know, issues between the Minister of Finance and Mr. Rembrandt prior to this, and in other circumstances, because I think also Mr. Rembrandt would have played a part in, if I'm not mistaken, he would have been part of CL Financial as part of the company or one of the organizations attached to CL Financial during the whole fiasco with CL Financial's collapse. And I don't know if issues like this would have come out from prior experience between the Minister of Finance and the Central Bank Governor. But obviously, from the time, Minister Imbert assumed office, there was a level of animosity between him and the Central Bank Governor.
Yeah, that was clear. That was absolutely lucidly clear the late Mr. Manning used to say. Give us a sense of what you make of the approach to this freedom of information question and providing information that is in the public interest. You've been working this territory for a long time. You worked in the department in the government that dealt with this question of freedom of information. And I know you're on the outside, so being one of the advocates for it and always seeking more rather than less information from people in authority. What would you say is our track record, our sort of administrative track record on making information possible? And even when you file action to get information, the atmosphere in which it comes. And so what's the attitude about freedom of information in a country such as ours? We talk about a free press and free information sharing and with the public and so on.
Yeah, I think the Freedom of Information Act history is unique in that when you look at who people uses the Freedom of Information Act in general, and I'm not talking about the cases that are normally publicized or get into the public domain from the court cases and everything, but in general, a lot of freedom of information requests are made by public officers to begin with. Last data set I had would have been that the Public Service Commission received a lot of the information. However, just about 2 weeks ago, I actually did a Freedom of Information Act masterclass for public authorities in order to train them on the Freedom of Information Act. And I was informed, for example, that the EMA, over a 5-month period, got about 3,000 requests. So we're seeing now where the Freedom of Information Act is being used more and more by members of the public to begin to get information. And
you said that.
Yeah. And contrary to public opinion, go ahead.
Yes, you said that one agency, the Environmental Management Authority, that 3,000 requests for information from them. What kind of stuff would that be, to the extent that you know? What is it that people try to find out there, and how is that an agency is so much in the public eye from that perspective, you think?
I think a lot of the information the EMA would be dealing with permits and permissions to begin to try to get that when people are doing constructions or people are doing stuff with regard to what will fall under the EMA's remit. Actually, I know Mr. Abood, Gary Abood, has done many FOI requests to the EMA regarding activities taken by the state in certain activities that they would have done. So a lot of it deals with permissions that have been granted by the EMA for activities done by the state or even by private sector organizations that have to get certificate of environmental clearance and other approvals before constructions are done. So again, like I said, contrary to public opinion, a lot of information is given out by public authorities. But when it comes to those special cases of information being made by, I would call the political actors like Devon Farage, Ravi Balgobin, Afro Raymond, and those guys, those are the ones that the government really trying to get special pieces of information to pull out, to put into the public domain for whatever purposes it may be. Those are the ones that, get highlighted and get publicized in the court cases. But generally, a lot of public authorities give out information generally when people normally ask for information. But there's still that hesitancy in certain areas where the government, particularly when it's very politically sensitive, that's where you see the hold back on government to give out information, and then it goes to court. And in most cases, the government are very unsuccessful in defending those cases.
Yeah, so you sum it up. You think we are freer than we think, or we are not as free as we think in terms of the attitudes of people in office to provide information?
I would say that there is a general acceptability for public authorities to give out information generally, where people are just asking for the mail information about themselves or approvals for certain things and stuff like that. But when it comes to politically sensitive questions, that's where the holdback comes in. And that's where, the government decides to not want to give out information and rely on the exemptions of the Act. And that's where they end up being taken to court in most cases. I think just recently I saw where TSTT, for example, was finally ruled to be a public authority under the Act after numerous years of TSTT trying to not be considered a subject to the FY Act. And in issues like those, political sensitivity stuff is where the government tries to protect the kind of information that goes out, and then eventually when it does go to court, because of Section 35 of the Act, that really focuses on public interest. The government has a history of being unsuccessful in defending those claims.
Yeah, and you get a sense that it is, and at the end of the day, you can't figure out the rationale for resisting attempts to get information in those cases where people have to go to court and take action. If, as you say, and that's a positive, that more or less, more rather than less, information comes out on request, and sometimes without request, and because there's some cases in which the state and the government has to provide information on a wide range of things to the public as a matter of course, and so.
Yeah, and the interesting thing about the Freedom of Information Act is that, and almost every judge, when they're dealing with an FOI case, notes it, is that in the Freedom of Information Act, it says that any discretion has to be given in favor of disclosure. So the court is already, when a case goes to court, heavily leaning on giving out the information, and the state has to provide a very strong, high rationale as to why this information should not be put out in the public domain, because ideally, most information from the government should be in the public domain. So the state really has to come very strongly to defend its action to say, these are the public interest considerations why this information can't go out in the public domain. And I would say in 8 out of 10, the government is very unsuccessful in defending those claims, and the court eventually, rules against them. So it's balancing this whole notion of, what information should be given out and what information should not be given out. And then if you balance that with, because a lot of claims are also made for public procurement matters in terms of contracts that are given, and then we can balance that with the proposed Procurement Act that, if fully implemented, would force ministries and force agencies to put out in the public domain levels of contracts, given out the values of the contracts, who got the contract. That should seriously cut the amount of FOI requests that are made in those instances. But so again, it's a very interesting, way of balancing this whole level of transparency and the government approach to putting out information in the public domain.
Yeah, I don't know what you might make of this. This is an attempt. I wrote a column on it. You remember the last Minister of Agriculture, Mr. Rambrat, talking about the fact that he had taken action as minister to have, I think, 2 or 3 public servants suspended or take disciplinary action against them because of what he found that they were doing, which was not consistent with the rules and regulations governing that very issue about state lands and who gets to occupy and whatnot and so on. And that they were in suspension. And he said they were reinstated without any reference to him whatsoever as the person who took the action by which they got suspended. And I thought that was something highly irregular, and I tried to find out why, and went to the people in the Department of Personnel Administration, and talked with people. I was told to write a letter. I didn't get any response. I was told to send an email. I did, with another hard copy. And when I tried to follow it up, the person with whom I was put on to, I think was the Chief Personnel Officer, said that, or the Director of Public Administration, all right, that it is not, through his person in his office, he's not disposed to give me that kind of information, and that is not something he wants to discuss in the press. And so I wrote a piece about that, and I don't know, how would you classify that and put that down, and as to whether, if I were to go for for a freedom of information request, he might have to say, well, this was the situation why that action was taken, such that the minister was not consulted at all and was not referred to at all, and the people were reinstated in their positions.
Yeah, I think, again, the purpose of the FOI request is, under the Freedom of Information Act, is to give members of the public, anybody, the ability to get information that they normally would not be able to get from public authorities. And that's a case in point, where generally that kind of information would not be put out in the public domain. But focusing on the areas of transparency and accountability, you know, a complaint made by a minister against senior public officers, you know, for derogation of office, you know, something like that definitely has to be treated with at a certain level of accountability, given that the public service is governed by a Public Service Act. So again, it's interesting that, you know, government sometimes would not want to give out this kind of information, or even public authorities wouldn't want to give out this information and hide behind the veil of, you know, secrecy, because again, it's interesting that although we have Freedom of Information Act, as far as I'm aware, the Official Secret Act is still, you know, enforced and it's still part of law. You know, so again, it's balancing all those issues of transparency, secrecy, and how do we navigate those waters. And I would say 20 years on, we're still navigating those waters of transparency in government.
Yeah. Okay, Rishi, well, thank you very much. You've been more than extremely helpful, as I say this morning. Thank you very much.
All right, thank you very much, Andy.
All right, so that's Rishi Maharaj, a public information advocate. We're going to take a break. When we come back, we should be talking to Mr. Rujanat Indar Singh, the Member of Parliament for Hoover South, on the issue of what does he make of, what was the impact as he saw it or sees it, of the demonstrations in Port of Spain on the weekend, on Friday. Stay with us. This is AM Prime on this Monday morning.
and creamy, you'll find it right here. Makes you smile, relax a while, it's fun and good cheer. Ooh, enjoy every scoop. Ooh, every taste will get you hooked. We have flavors that you love, a combination special. Come along, enjoy our treats. This is Uncle Pete's.
The best for your baby is at thebesttoys.com. From the best strollers, car seats, baby carriers, high chairs, booster seats, rockers, jumpers and bouncers, walkers, baby blankets, feeding accessories, bathtubs. Visit us in-store at Forces Flagship McLean. Shop online now at dbesttoys.com. Order via call or WhatsApp at 332-BABY. And remember, we have the best toys at the best prices.
Every word, every line, every paragraph depicts a real moment in someone's life. A father, a sister, a mother, a brother. We at Newsday are dedicated to you, the people, and through independent, unwavering journalism, strive to always bring your stories to life. Because your stories are more than just words. Newsday, independent and credible.
Join me, Sule A. Joseph, as I delve into the day-to-day psychological issues plaguing our society. We will discuss behaviors that encompass the biological influences, social pressures, and environmental factors that affect how you think, act, and feel. Site, Thursdays at 11 a.m. only on WESN, Content Capital.
With society plagued by a host of issues, with debates surrounding our urgent concerns falling short, with questions of our future not always being answered.
The conversation continues. Join me, Kemuel Pascal, as the voice of the youth comes to life. We will confront the controversial topics of today's world to gain answers that are key for a better tomorrow. One and One with me, Kemuel Pascal. Wednesdays at 10 a.m. only on WESN, Content Capital.
What's the best way to grab the attention of viewers?
Please exercise more patience. You have to be kidding me.
Doing what we do best. I'll say at the very least it's a conspiracy of laziness against the people.
Join me, Keaton Shaw.
And me, Sean Michael Small, for Talking Point.
Weekdays from 8 a.m. to 9:30 a.m.
We go in-depth on the trending issues and engage the most controversial newsmakers
as we get them to account to the people for their actions.
You can't go to the government with nothing. You can't go to cabinet with an empty hand, with a wish.
I'm glad that we're having this a sober, mature discussion.
In the present situation, I expect a continuation of the chaos.
Join us for the discussion, Mondays to Fridays,
only on WESN,
the Content Capital.
Welcome back to the program. So we're talking now with Mr. Rujunath Indar Singh, my good friend and colleague, on the issue of the impact of the demonstrations in Port of Spain over the week, but Friday, as trade unions continue to push back against what the CPO has put on the table. It's 4% at this point. It started, of course, you remember, with 2%, and there was some talk about that it will get to 7%. But to what extent the activism against it is being ramped up and could be seen to be effective? That's just how we will start the discussion. Good morning, my friend. Good to see you, comrade.
Well, good morning to you, Andy. Good morning to your viewing audience. Good to see you. And I think that the activism on the part of the trade union movement was long overdue, given the track record of this government, taking into consideration that when they were in opposition, the Prime Minister, then leader of the opposition, signed a memorandum of understanding with the Labour movement prior to the general elections of 2015. And part of that memorandum committed itself to the immediate settlement of all outstanding wage negotiations and so on. This government has had a miserable track record, a poor track record. In fact, they cannot report to the country after 7 years in power how many negotiations that they have settled. The government that I belong to, led by Mrs. Prasad Bisesa, could have reported that her government settled 135 negotiations and paid nearly $5 billion in back pay at a time when there was an economic global meltdown and so on. When we came into office, Mrs. Prasad Bisesa and her cabinet did not throw up her hands in the air and moan and groan and gripe about the collective bargaining process. And in fact, the activism apparently has gotten the Prime Minister to come out of his crease. The Prime Minister has been missing in action for reasons known or unknown to us over the last couple of weeks. One was that he was in quarantine because of COVID, and then you had a meeting that was called by the Minister of Local Government to deal with local government reform. And Minister Al-Rawi told the country that he boycotted the meeting or did not turn up to address the meeting because of the UNC's call on the part of Mrs. Prasad Bisasa for the UNC councillors to boycott that particular meeting. From where I stand, the trade union movement needs to not only focus on the collective bargaining process too. Their activism needs to be concentrated. For example, you may be able to recollect that Minister Imbert in the 2020 budget presentation, I think somewhere in October of 2019, promised local government workers a pension plan similar to what he said that would be along the lines of the group health scheme and so on. My sources within the trade union movement, they have indicated to me that nothing has happened since that announcement. There's filling of vacancies within the public service. You can remember that the government said that there would have been a freeze on hiring in the public service. The government unilaterally too has taken a decision that they are no longer accepting persons, young people who are looking for positions in the teaching service and so on. OSHA, for example, is a key institution in this country, and that institution has a number of vacancies and so on. So from where I sit, the activism on the part of the trade union movement needs to continue. It needs to have a collective and sustained approach so that the government can understand their disconnect. And at the end of the day, we are in 2022. We are more or less now coming into the last quarter of 2022. And the collective bargaining process for me has been hijacked by the Prime Minister and his Minister of Finance, and by extension his cabinet. If you cannot agree, allow the process to go to the special tribunal, or allow the industrial court, where the industrial court has to pronounce in terms of certain negotiations within the public sector framework, and allow from where I said, the independence of the collective bargaining process to really entrench itself, so that we can all have confidence. Because you see, even under this government, the concept of social dialogue has collapsed, and I do not know what is the status of the National Tripartite Advisory Council.
It is in abeyance.
Well, I do not know if it is in abeyance or the government unilateral, high-handed, contemptuous and arrogant approach has resulted in labor withdrawing. You must always recollect that the Communication Workers Union was the recognized majority union for the workers of the tourism development companies. Whatever discussions took place at the level of the cabinet, and probably a policy decision was taken that the company should be closed down. The minister with responsibility at that time did not even see the importance of writing and getting the recognized majority union into a meeting room. She stormed out of the cabinet meeting room, called the then president, Joseph Remy. A telephone call, I think, lasted approximately 90 seconds and so on, and informed a recognized majority union that the government had taken a decision to close the tourism development and even Mama guide the union to tell the union, put in a proposal to focus on the restructuring of the company, knowing fully well that that proposal would have ended up in the wastebasket.
As you raise that, it comes across my mind that you have a situation in which both the CEO of the Trinidad Tourism Agency and the Tobago Tourism Agency resigned their jobs.
Yes, and again, we have really not been told. Unfortunately, Parliament is in recess and so on. So we hope that with the passage of time, that particular issue could be ventilated probably under questions or notice, so that we could get the reason why such actions were pursued at these two entities. Because at the time that we continue to hear about the need for tourism, the need for the diversification of the economy and so on, these are two important office holders in the context of the growth and development of tourism in our society.
All right, so I'll come back to the events of the day then, on the intact, what has happened with it. I don't know if you've been following the writings of my good friend and colleague as well, Roy Mitchell, who was sort of acting, in my estimation, as a kind of proxy for the state side of it. He's encouraging to going back around the table. One of the points he made in one of the pieces was that, well, trade union leaders have to understand that, you know, it's an advisory body, and that if you proffer advice, there's no compulsion on anybody to take the advice, and because that is what it is. And he explained this, or at least outlined this issue, elaborated on this thing about, well, in some cases he's saying that trade union leaders.
Well, I read the article.
To get vexed for that,
I read the article, and well, I think that he would have been an advisor and had some special posts in the context of the National Tripartite Advisory Council and so on. So, whilst I note his comments and so on, at the end of the day, you have to understand how the government has treated the labor movement in terms of the rank and file of the labor movement, and what has been the track record of the National Tripartite Advisory Council and so on. There has been no reporting mechanism to say that, you know, we could have, the public could judge and indicate, well, yes, A, B, and C has taken place, and there are successes and so on. You see, if you want to ensure that such a body operates with a degree of success, a degree of cordiality and so on, and you have to operate with the greatest sense of trust and openness and excuse me, and be willing to meet and treat with all good intent and purposes. You may be able to recall again, because I know you follow a lot on the industrial relations front. Now, for example, when Petrotrin, the government was going in the direction of making decisions on the future of Petrotrin, the government spent, I think, $63 million to engage a number of consultants. Not one of the consultants engaged by the government recommended the closure of the refinery. And in addition to that, there was, a memorandum of understanding or agreement that was registered at the industrial court between the OWTU and Petrotrin, when it was indicated that a committee would be formed over the next 18 months to look at the future of Petrotrin and come up with a new business model and so on. The union was supposed to put 2 representatives on that restructuring committee. That was agreed at the industrial court. That never became a reality. And in fact, the Prime Minister at some public meeting, I think was it in Marabella, told the country that the government was not closing down Petrotrin. And there was this famous quotation that he made, this line, that if you had your head inside the freezer or the fridge door, close the fridge door and listen to him. The government was not closing down Petrotrin. And then the narrative moved from that to all must go, the famous words of the then chairman, Wilfred Espinay. So how can you trust this government in terms of its approach to meeting and treating? And that is why I am saying to Mr. Mitchell here this morning, return to what? Return to what? When ArcelorMittal and Centrin was closed down, and when they were, the officials of ArcelorMittal was looking for the Minister of Labour, the then Minister of Labour, Jennifer Baptiste-Primer, to discuss that business decision and so on, she was nowhere to be found. And with much fanfare, I could remember Minister Baptiste-Primer, who is also my constituent. She lives in the constituency of Cooper South. Yeah. She came with much fanfare again in the jurisdiction of the constituency, went to the headquarters of the Steelworkers Union on the Southern Main Road in California and announced the creation of a national employment registry where retrenched workers would have been reintegrated into the workforce and so on. Where is that today? That was the same minister who told the country that retrenched workers would be provided with the opportunity to drive long-haul trucks in Canada and promised even dual citizenship when the then Minister of Foreign Affairs at that point in time, Dennis Moses, had no knowledge. We had no discussion between the government of Canada and the government of Trinidad and Tobago. So I had to conclude on whose authority did the minister make those pronouncements at that point in time. When the pandemic came, Andy, we heard about pandemic leave, we heard about work from home policy and so on. Where are these things today in the context of meeting and treating with the concerns of workers? So the General Secretary of NATO had all rights to tell the Prime Minister that given the government's approach to the collective bargaining process, he does not care about women and single mothers and so on in the society. And I saw that the Prime Minister has challenged the General Secretary of NATO to a public debate. But I want to remind the Prime Minister here this morning that he should be the last to speak about women's rights and women's issues. When a worker was dismissed at the Ministry of Sport with the backdrop of allegations into sexual harassment and the alleged conduct of a then cabinet minister, where was the Prime Minister when taxpayers' monies of $150,000 was used to cover up this whole fiasco? Did the Prime Minister appointed? Yes, go ahead.
No, I'm saying at an attempted cover-up because it didn't remain undercover at all. But
yeah, well, Andy, you must remember that a 3-person committee was appointed by that included former PS Jackie Wilson, I think Fulade Matuta, and Attorney at Law Elaine Green. When that report was compiled, it went to the Attorney General, the then Attorney General Faris Alrari for sanitization, and that report has been shelved.
It never saw the light of day. Yeah.
It never saw the light of the day. Wasn't the Prime Minister concerned about the cries and the pain and the suffering of this employee at the Ministry of Work, of Sport?
Of Sport at the time.
Total hypocrisy. The Prime Minister attacked the leader of the opposition, Mrs. Kamala Prasad Bissasain, the most vile way, attempting to even speak about her body parts and so on. And this is a Prime Minister who, in the glee of and spirit of carnival, I do not know, was engaging young women and so on in the stage in San Fernando. So he must do some introspection when he wants to speak about the concern for women and so on, and even referred to women as what? Golf courses, and they need, if you do not prune them consistently, they will be left out of pasture and so on.
All right, so let's come back to where we are with the situation that caused this. You would say that Friday's show of force by the trade unions and members was bigger than the one when the 2% had been put on the table, and you think this is growing?
Yes, it is growing. It is the workers and not only the workers in the public sector, Andy, but workers throughout the length and breadth of Trinidad and Tobago. Families are struggling. I'm a member of parliament. I can tell you that people come from time to time looking for help with groceries, for school books. The suffering of single mothers, especially those who work in the service sector and the fast food industry, it is real. And against that backdrop, I think that the government needs to address this whole question of collective bargaining, or up till now, we continue to hear from certain ministers of government that, for example, Rohan Sinanan told the country that he doesn't have the money to fix roads and so on. If there is an agreement with the public sector unions, what is the government's position as it relates to paying the outstanding back pay and so on? And I think that this is where the Prime Minister and his cabinet needs to man up and step up to the plate and engage the unions in a very creative and innovative approach. Whether it is going to be something like, we could go back to the 86 period bond. Is it going to be offering workers shares in certain IPO offering from a state point of view and so on? I do not know. But I think that the Minister of Finance and so on needs to come to the table and engage the trade union movement, engage the country in a very transparent manner.
But you just put two things on the table there. So those are suggestions. You're saying that there has to be that kind of creative thinking to come up with something that would be acceptable, if not on the straight percentage increases.
Well, and again, from a collective bargaining point of view, I do not know what is the government approach on the whole question of pension benefits and so on. For example, the government promised, as I said, a local government workers a contributory pension plan. I do not know what is their position on group health benefits and so on. You see, from a collective bargaining point of view, also, if you cannot, if for some reason, I do not know what is the state of the treasury, but you have to be innovative and creative in the whole collective bargaining approach. It cannot continue where workers are working in 2022. As I said, we are moving on to 2023, and they cannot deal with the cost of living increases in our society. And from all indicators, the economy has collapsed. There's no foreign direct investment coming into the country. We have been on how many years of negative economic growth. There's no creation of jobs and so on for additional monies to be spent within the economy of the country. And that is frightening. Our debt is mounting. And I hate to think one day that we will be defaulting on our debt, and that would have tremendous implications and so on for the overall functioning of the economy of Trinidad and Tobago.
All right, and what do you make of, I have it in my mind, all the time, and I chuckle when I think about it. That picture on the front page of one of the papers after the first demonstration in Port of Spain on this in this round, in which Mr. Roger was pictured speaking into the ear of the opposition leader. And I make that point to say that he had said that he wanted to have nothing to do with her and others like her because that you were corrupt at the time, and which was one of his reasons for saying that they had walked away from the People's Partnership. So I'm trying to figure out what was that discussion about, and to what extent that she has either herself or sort of bring you all along with where the trade unions are going on the issue, and what connects the UNC to the labor movement now.
Well, the UNC has been a party that is rooted in what we would call the struggles for peace, bread, and justice. When you go back to our founding fathers, you go back to the ULF, you go back to the founding father, Basdev Pandey, it is very clear that we are rooted along those lines. And Mrs. Prasad Bissasa's government, clearly, I mean, we did not deal with every possible issue, but it was labor-friendly in terms of settling 135 negotiation, $5 billion in back pay, creating 56,000 jobs, a special duty allowance for public officers of $1,000, this $1 million payout when the law enforcement officers fall in the, unfortunately, fall in the line of duty. That payment to the family is as a result of the vision of the government led by Ms. Prasad Bisasa. So we always, we raised the minimum wage from $9 to $17.50 and so on twice, on 2 occasions, Andy. So it shows that there's a track record on the part of the government of the UNC. From where we sit, there will always be differences of opinion in terms of how a government governs and so on, but it is always the responsibility on the part of the opposition, understanding its roots and foundation, to be willing to engage all stakeholders in the society. We have analyzed the situation and we realize that it will come to a head in the context of where the collective bargaining process is and how the government is treating the labor movement and by extension the workers and the entire citizenry of the country. And that is the genesis of willing to cross that bridge or create that bridge to engage the stakeholders to listen to the labor movement. And that is where we are today in terms of continued dialogue. We are entrenched on the principles of social dialogue, and this is part of that process.
And some people in sort of the NGO sector, for instance, the Human Resources Management Association, they put out a statement, an article in one of the papers a couple of days ago, suggesting, and there are other people who are taking that position, that perhaps the quest for increased wages may not be where the future is in terms of industrial relations discussions between managements and workers and unions. And they're talking about probably enhanced sort of working benefits, retirement kind of benefits, different kinds of packages that could be worked out for making people's jobs more stable and getting more out of it, different kinds of allowances and what have you, rather than straight percentage increases. Is that something that you're considering at all, or you think that?
Well, that is something, if you listen to me a couple of minutes ago, I pointed in that direction about pension benefits, group health benefits, and so on in the context of retirement. And this is why I would challenge, not the ministers, but I will challenge the office of the chief personnel officer and the negotiating team to be innovative, engage the unions. I'm sure that if they put something that is creative, innovative, and for workers' benefit in the medium and long term and so on, I'm sure that it will be considered. But the ball is in the court of the chief personnel officer. But if there's continued interference by the Prime Minister and the Minister of Finance and so on, this will not augur well in the context of the free and fair collective bargaining process, because at the end of the day, I would want to point you in the direction of when there was an agreement between the Public Services Association and the National Insurance Board of Trinidad and Tobago. Minister Imbert intervened. He ordered an investigation into that collective agreement, and up till now we do not know what have been the findings of that investigation on the part of Minister Imbert.
All right, my friend, we're going to have to leave it there. Thank you very much. You've been more than quite helpful this morning. Already endorsing the Member of Parliament for Hoover South, former government minister, former trade union leader. Thank you very much.
Thank you very much, Andy. Have a great day. Take care.
All right. Okay, you too. So we're going to take a break. When we come back, where we still have to share with you the new state poll, we'll take a look around the region, see where we're at on this morning. So stay with us.
Knowing how to tell authentic is as easy as 1, 2, 3. Find it, match it, search it. Step 1. Find the style number on the tag. Step 2. Match the style number inside the jersey with the number on the tag. Step 3. Search it. A quick Google search of the style number will verify the jersey is authentic when the search results match the jersey being searched. Don't be fooled by counterfeit jerseys. Before you buy, remember to find it, match it, search it.
Fan Zone, 2 locations nationwide. Center City Mall, Chaguanas and Movietown, Port of Spain. Nationwide delivery available.
People really want to know, what about me? Where do I fit? Yes. What is in the ride for me in terms of a better Trinidad and Tobago? And I'm pleased to shed some light on that.
The purpose of bail is to ensure your attendance at court. That's it. It is not punitive. It is not rehabilitative.
We, the police officers, we are professional, and we are here for whenever the survivor is ready to come forward.
We have the right to private and family life, the right to religious freedoms and beliefs and thoughts and expression. But these rights are not absolute. Certain rights can be limited.
The law is to govern the whole, is for all of us in public.
In this season, we talk more about health, wellness, and everything in between. I am so excited to share with you everything about health and wellness so that you can design the life that you've always dreamed of. Join me here on What's Up Doc. What's Up Doc, Tuesdays and Thursdays here on WESN, Content Capital.
The issue, the continued rise in the price of flour and its impact on the cost of living in Trinidad and Tobago. How should we go about it? I want to ask you, what has been revealed to you about the state of vulnerability in the country because of this exercise and because of what we're going through? Is the government losing the war on the vaccine front?
The discussion should revolve around the common good for the greatest number of people in Trinidad and Tobago.
How do we inculcate a sense of respect and regard for people who may not be of your own political ilk or persuasion.
The communities are now being used by political opportunists. So
when the tables are turned, it's the same way. Okay, this has been 10 questions. I'm Andy Johnson, and we see you next time.
Welcome to the American University of Barbados School of Medicine. We offer 2 comprehensive MD programs, 5.5-year program for high school finishers, and 4-year program for college graduates.
The American University of Barbados has been accredited with the Barbados Accreditation Council, BAC, and has been accredited
by CAMHP.
As the medical school has affiliate hospitals at Baltimore and Chicago in the USA and the Caribbean islands.
Don't miss us in TNT in Tobago, Mount Irving Bay Resort, August 12th and 13th. In Trinidad, Trade Winds Hotel San Fernando, August 14th and 15th. And K-Poc Hotel, Maraval, August 16th and 17th.
Welcome back to the program. It's time now to take a look at the Newsday poll, and the question has to do with what sort of regulations are needed in place to manage the issue of fireworks displays around this time of the year. We have this big one coming up on this Independence. That's the question. What regulations should be implemented to deal with the indiscriminate use of fireworks? And here are some of the responses. Whatever is to be done, the government will ensure it is done in a way to accommodate fire one. That's cynical. I would prefer to address the importation of the fireworks and how they obtain valuable foreign exchange. Another response, they should be banned unless they are silent fireworks, but the AG's office is deliberately stalling because both the PNM and the financiers want a big show, especially before upcoming local government elections. Ban all fireworks. We have enough gun fireworks, plus look at what happens to animals. So those are the responses to the questions of what new regulations should be put in place to harmonize and to integrate the question of fireworks and to minimize the distress with fireworks around this time of the year, coming up to Independence. Well, let's take a look around the region now. We want to start with the latest developments in Guyana. News Source Guyana will tell us about this story.
Declaring that in the absence of a leader of the opposition and the Police Service Commission being in place, the president could not be faulted for exercising his own deliberate judgment, Acting Chief Justice Roxanne George today ruled that the president's unilateral appointment of Clifton Hicken as the acting police commissioner did not breach the Constitution and was therefore legal. In handing down her judgment, the Chief Justice noted that there was no leader of the opposition in place for the president to consult, and that was no fault of the president. She said, given the peculiar circumstances of the case, that the president could have acted pursuant to Article 111 in accordance with his own deliberate judgment to make a temporary appointment to the post of Commissioner of Police. She said, thus, in appointing the second respondent, the president acted within the bounds of the Constitution. The current opposition leader Aubrey Norton was sworn into office more than 3 months after his predecessor handed in his resignation. It was during that period that the president went ahead with the appointment of Hicken as the acting police commissioner. The Constitution requires for there to be consultation and agreement between the president and the opposition leader on the appointment of a police commissioner. The same requirement is used for the appointment of an acting police commissioner. But in her ruling, the Chief Justice noted that because at the time of the appointment there was no opposition leader in place, the court could not agree with the applicant's position that there was no consultation. In appointing Hicken to act as Commissioner of Police, President Irfan Ali had indicated that he invoked the doctrine of necessity. But the Chief Justice was keen on pointing out that the doctrine of necessity was not applicable in the circumstance, though the appointment was necessary and as such corresponding reliefs cannot be granted. The last substantive Commissioner of Police, Leslie James, had proceeded on pre-retirement leave on the 31st of July 2020. However, his retirement took effect on the 1st of May last year. Deputy Commissioner Nigel Hoppy at the time continued to perform the duties of commissioner. However, he proceeded on pre-retirement leave in March of this year. And given the important function of the Guyana Police Force, the Chief Justice said all would agree that the post could not have been left vacant. The Chief Justice also said, based on the application before the court, it would have appeared that the source of the contention was the use of the word act. The attorney for the applicant had submitted that in the absence of consultation, Hicken could have only been appointed to perform the duties of and not to act as police commissioner. However, the Chief Justice said while advancing adherence to the Constitution, the applicant's affidavit revealed seemingly similar non-compliance in the appointment of Mr. Hoppy. She pointed out that while there was a leader of the opposition and Police Service Commission when the substantive police commissioner proceeded on pre-retirement leave in 2020, it would appear that Article 211 was not adhered to when Hoppy was appointed.
As I was Guyana this morning, here's what's happening, the latest in Barbados.
Officials reveal that the near $4 billion National Insurance Fund need an urgent fix or it could be depleted in another 12 years. Our news team took to the streets today to ask citizens about the development, and most are very concerned.
Self-employed people don't have much benefits like the people that is working, right? Because if we don't work, we won't get paid. And if we don't pay contributions, we won't have anything. But not only that, for us to put in contributions, if we're sick, we still don't get anything. You understand? So the self-employed people that we're talking about, there's less people that self-employed pay insurance, national insurance. But we are scared because we don't get benefits like the others. If we stay home, we don't get no benefit. You understand? So we might be wondering what are we paying? Why are we paying like that all the time? Why? And we are not getting anything. And some of us might be saying, who said we're going to reach 67 to get pension? So that's how people might be feeling, that self-employed just like me. So I don't know.
It's the most unfortunate situation. And my heart hurts for not for me, but for the ones that the future generation, what is going to happen to them. Because if we keep going down this path, then God help us. It's all right to say, because it's always the man at the bottom that suffers. They are like all them politicians. They're bread butter. 2 terms, they can get the pension. We got to work for years and years and years. And then no pension or reduced pension or pension uncertain. That's hard. And it's an unfortunate situation, a very, very unfortunate situation. I wouldn't like to be in it. Thank God I'm not. But you still got to think of your fellow man.
Put things in place so that we don't have to depend on the NIS.
What are you doing? You're a young person.
Insurance. Okay. hoping that they don't collapse at Kiko.
They give me trouble down the road, except something very serious happens and very necessary steps be taken. You've got problems on the road. You've got problems on the road. And what they say isn't too far from now. So I know you can run in and get in holiday.
Noted economist Professor Justin Robinson has underscored that now is the time to fix the NIS and set it on a sound footing. He told Barbados Today delay is not an option.
All options should be considered and carefully analyzed so that we can come up with a workable solution to protect the NIS for the future. It's obviously a problem that is upon us, and the longer we take the act, the worse the problem would get and the more painful the solution.
All right, and as usual, just before we go, we ask you to watch this.
So Domino's really tried to expand to Italy, and it didn't go so well. Now they're shutting down. Here's what Italians had to say about it when interviewed.
Chi è Domino? Lo conosci te?
Domino è una catena di pizzerie americane. Volevano portare il modello di pizza americana a Roma.
Ah, proprio qui. Quelli che hanno inventato la pizza la portano qui. Non ci capiscono niente americani.
The U.S. chain entered the country around 7 years ago with hopes of conquering the Italian market with homegrown specialties like the signature pineapple pizza and introducing a large-scale delivery service.
Io sono in Italia Domino.
Sì, cos'è?
But again, we are talking about the birthplace of pizza here.
No, non lo so, non la conosco.
È una grande catena americana che faceva pizza e volevano aprire la pizza americana a Roma.
Meglio la pizza italiana, sicuramente. Ciao, buona giornata.
Faced with strong competition from not only mom and pop shops, but an influx in delivery services throughout the pandemic, Domino's realized it was time to say ciao.
That's our broadcast for this Monday morning. We tell you can always keep in touch with us here at AM Prime at WANCC. You can send your emails to AMPrime at WESNCC. We tell you we'll be coming to you from this location again in Scarborough, Tobago, in fact, in Crown Point. Tomorrow on the program, we'll share with you some of what will have transpired today, the first day of this conference of the Caribbean Broadcasting Union. So that and more you should look forward to. But we tell you at the top of the hour, the guys will come in for today's edition of Talking Point. That's Shah and Small. But for now, from here, I'm Andy Johnson. Thanks for watching. We thank our guests. And thank you. We see you tomorrow.
WESN